My father had always forbidden me from setting foot on his vineyard. He never shouted, never threatened, but the firmness in his voice was enough to close the subject. "Napa Valley's not for you, Christopher. Promise me you'll stay away." Those words haunted me for years, and I grew up believing he guarded some secret hidden among the vines of that legendary land. Now he was gone, and I was left staring at a mahogany desk in a lawyer's office in San Francisco, a sealed envelope resting between us like a final riddle. My name is Christopher Mercer, I should say before I go on, 52 years old, son of a complicated man who lived 2 lives. He had children from a first marriage who turned their backs on him when he was poor, and then there was me, the only child from his second chance at happiness. I never wanted his fortune, I only wanted his respect. And yet, here I was, about to hear the last of his secrets. Mr. Langford, the lawyer, adjusted his glasses and slid the envelope toward me. "Your father instructed that this be given to you only after his death." My pulse quickened as I broke the wax seal. Inside, a brass key glinted against a folded letter in my father's unmistakable hand. "My son, if you're reading this, then I have left before I could tell you everything. The vineyard is yours now. Take your mother there. It was always meant for her. What you'll find may change the way you see me." I blinked, confused. "Napa Valley," I murmured. Mr. Langford hesitated. "That's the thing. Everyone assumed Napa. He let you believe that, but the property is in Sonoma. He bought it back quietly years ago and rebuilt it in secret. He called it his redemption." For a moment I thought I had misheard him. Sonoma? The land my father protected with silence wasn't in the glamorous valley the world envied, but next door, quieter, older, humbler, but no less valuable. "Why keep that from me?" I whispered. The lawyer's eyes softened. "Perhaps to test you. Perhaps because the truth carries weight only when revealed at the right time." He tapped the desk. "The deed is in your name, taxes prepaid for 5 years, everything arranged. He wanted no delays." I sat back, gripping the heavy key, the letter trembling in my hand. My father, the man who divided his life between 2 families, had spent his final years building something none of us knew existed. And he wanted me, not my half-brothers who had once cast him aside, to continue it. I looked at the lawyer. "What about the others?" "They know nothing, yet," he said. "But Christopher, when they learn, they will come." A chill ran through me. I thought of my mother, frail now, memory slipping like sand through her fingers. He had written that the vineyard was for her, for the woman who had stood by him when everyone turned away. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it inside my jacket. "Then I need to see this place," I said. Mr. Langford nodded gravely. "I would go soon, before the others catch the scent." 2 days later, as the afternoon sun burned over Highway 101, I drove north toward Sonoma with the key in my pocket and my father's words echoing in my mind. When I reached the wrought iron gates, the sign read, "Mercer Estate." Vines stretched as far as the eye could see, rows of green and gold twisting over the hills. He had rebuilt it into something magnificent. My hand trembled as I fit the key into the lock. The gates creaked open. Gravel crunched beneath my tires as I followed the winding road toward a house I had never seen, yet somehow felt was waiting for me. And when I stepped out of the car and reached for the front door, I realized I was holding my breath, because whatever waited inside would finally tell me who my father truly was. The key turned in the front door, and the old oak hinges groaned as if waking from a long sleep. I stepped inside cautiously, expecting dust and decay. Instead, light streamed through tall windows onto polished wood floors. The air smelled faintly of oak barrels and lavender. Not abandonment, but care. The house was alive. Every room I entered bore my father's unseen hand. The kitchen gleamed with new appliances, the kind my mother once dreamed of. A sunlit sitting room overlooked the vineyard, its shelves lined with books she loved, volumes of poetry she used to read aloud before her memory began to slip away. I froze. He hadn't built this for himself. He had built it for her. I walked down a hallway until I found a door marked with a brass plaque, Maria's room, my mother's name. My throat tightened as I pushed it open. Inside was a sanctuary, a soft bed, curtains that framed the rolling hills, a writing desk with her initials carved into the wood. Even a collection of her favorite vinyl records stacked neatly beside a restored turntable. I sat on the edge of the bed, the letter still in my pocket. All at once, the pieces began to fit. My father hadn't just purchased land. He had been preparing a refuge for the woman he knew would one day lose her sense of time, a place where her fading memories might find something familiar. I whispered aloud, "You wanted her to live her last years here, didn't you?" Silence answered, but I felt him everywhere. Downstairs, I found the door to the cellar. The air grew cooler as I descended stone steps, the scent of fermenting grapes growing stronger. Racks of wine bottles stretched along the walls, labeled meticulously with harvest years. At the center stood a table with a leather-bound journal resting on it. I opened it with trembling hands. Pages of notes filled the book, drawings of irrigation systems, sketches of trellises, lists of grape varieties. He had been restoring the vineyard himself, line by line, season by season. But what caught my eye was a final page written in his hand. "If you're here, Christopher, it means the time has come. This vineyard is more than vines and barrels. It's a promise. Your mother once dreamed of a place where wine and memory could live together. I couldn't give it to her in life, so I leave it to you in my stead. Take care of her here. Keep this land alive. And beware, the others will come for it. They always do." I pressed my palms against the paper, feeling both the weight of his trust and the shadow of his warning. From the cellar window, I caught sight of the vineyard itself, rolling rows bathed in golden dusk. I stepped outside, letting the evening breeze carry the earthy scent of grapes around me. For a moment, I could almost see my father walking those rows, a quiet figure with soil on his hands, building a legacy in silence. But as I stood there, the crunch of tires on gravel snapped me back. Headlights swept across the vines, cutting through the twilight. A black SUV rolled up the driveway, stopping near the porch. 3 figures stepped out, their silhouettes sharp against the fading light. I didn't need to ask who they were. My half-brothers had arrived.
They didn't bother to knock. The front door rattled under their fists, and I heard my name barked with impatience. "Christopher! Open up! We need to talk!" I stayed still in the shadows of the hallway, watching the outlines of their figures through the frosted glass. Robert, the eldest, carried himself like he owned everything he looked at. Alan, the lawyer, already clutched a folder of documents, eager to turn blood into paperwork. David lingered behind, his silence heavier than their words. I didn't open the door. Not yet. Instead, I turned back toward the cellar. My father's warning echoed in my head. They will come for it. They always do. If he had left me instructions, there had to be more than the journal. Something hidden, something meant to arm me for exactly this moment. At the far wall, behind a stack of oak barrels, I noticed a square outline of metal in the stone. A coffer, old but sturdy, its lock worn smooth from use. I knelt, running my fingers over it. The key from the lawyer's envelope didn't fit, but I remembered my father's habits. He was a man who hid meaning in details. I glanced again at the journal. The page where he signed his name bore a faint set of numbers in the corner. A date. Not his birthday, not mine. It was the day he married my mother. I spun the dial, heart pounding. With a heavy click, the lock gave way. Inside, bundles of documents filled the narrow space. I pulled them out onto the cellar table. Bank statements, contracts, even notarized letters. But one folder was marked with bold strokes of his handwriting. For Christopher. I opened it and froze. Page after page detailed the betrayals of the brothers now standing at my door. Robert siphoning funds from a failed investment group. Alan burying evidence of tax evasion. David signing false affidavits to cover their tracks. Each page signed, sealed, witnessed. My father had collected everything, patiently, meticulously, like a man preparing for war. And then there were letters. Unsent drafts addressed to me. One read, "Son, if you are holding these papers, the vineyard is already in your care. I kept this land hidden because your half-brothers would have ruined it, just as they ruined our family. Do not show them mercy when they come. Show them the truth." The pounding on the door upstairs grew louder. Alan's voice carried through the walls. "Christopher, the vineyard belongs to all of us. Don't make this difficult." I gathered the documents, slid them back into the folder, and locked the coffer again. My hands trembled not from fear, but from the weight of knowing I held a weapon my father had forged in silence. As I climbed the cellar stairs, I pictured my mother's room upstairs, her name engraved on the plaque, her memories waiting to fade. She would never survive their cruelty. This vineyard wasn't just soil and vines. It was her sanctuary, my father's redemption, my duty. The pounding stopped. For a moment, silence stretched across the house. Then Robert's voice rang out, steady and commanding. "If you won't open the door, Christopher, we'll open it ourselves." The knob twisted, wood splintered under their force. I set the folder down on the kitchen counter, squared my shoulders, and faced the entryway. The lock snapped, the door burst open, and the three of them stepped inside with the confidence of men who believed blood gave them rights. And in that instant, I realized the battle for my father's vineyard had already begun. They marched into the house as if it still belonged to them. Robert led the way, his suit immaculate, his jaw set in the kind of confidence that came from years of taking what he wanted. Alan followed close behind, a leather folder under his arm like a weapon. David closed the door quietly, his silence colder than any threat. "Christopher," Robert said, spreading his arms as though greeting a guest. "So this is the grand secret, Father's vineyard." His eyes swept the room with disdain. "I see he wasted no expense trying to impress you." I kept my voice calm. "You weren't invited." Alan smirked. "We don't need invitations. Blood gives us a stake in this property. Our father may have tried to erase us, but the law doesn't forget." I laid the folder of documents on the kitchen counter, just out of their reach. "Funny," I said, "because I have records that tell a very different story." Robert's expression flickered, just for an instant. Then he stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You don't want to start a war with us, Christopher. We have the money, the lawyers, the influence. You're just a teacher's son, raised on scraps. Do you really think you can hold on to all this?" His words stung, but I didn't flinch. "Father left it to me for a reason. He didn't trust any of you." Alan's smirk widened as he opened his folder. Or maybe he wasn't thinking clearly. We've already filed a petition in court challenging the will. Declaring him mentally incompetent when he bought this land will be very easy. Years of health issues, erratic decisions. A judge will see it our way. I could feel the heat rising in my chest. He was sound of mind until the day he died, and you know it. David finally spoke, his voice low and measured. Sound of mind. He hid this entire estate from his own family. He kept his second wife locked away from us. He played favorites, created division. That doesn't sound like a man in control, does it? I took a step closer, refusing to let their lies root themselves in my home. No, that sounds like a man protecting what little joy he had left from the three of you. The room went still. Robert's jaw tightened. Alan shifted uncomfortably. Even David's composure cracked for a heartbeat. Robert leaned forward, his tone sharpening. "Sell it to us. Walk away with a generous payout, more than you'd ever earn in a lifetime. You can take care of your mother somewhere else. Sonoma isn't for you." At the mention of my mother, something hardened inside me. This vineyard was built for her. Every room, every vine, every brick. He gave it to me so I could give it back to her. And I won't let you turn it into just another business deal. Alan slammed his folder shut, frustration breaking through his polished act. "Then you leave us no choice. We'll bury you in court, Christopher. You'll lose everything. And when you do, you'll wish you had listened." The air grew heavy, silence thick as smoke. For a moment, I thought they might lunge across the counter, but Robert raised his hand, signaling restraint. Not tonight, but soon, very soon. They turned toward the door, their footsteps echoing across the hardwood floor like the ticking of a clock counting down. Before leaving, Robert paused, his hand on the knob. He glanced back at me, his eyes like steel. "Enjoy your inheritance while it lasts. It won't be yours for long." The door slammed, rattling the windows. I exhaled, only then realizing how tightly I had been gripping the edge of the counter. On the table, my father's folder lay unopened, waiting. I placed a hand on it, heart pounding, and whispered, "What did you prepare me for, Father? What else did you hide?" Upstairs, the wind caught the curtains in my mother's room, and for the first time, I felt the weight of what was coming. The vineyard wasn't just land, it was a battlefield, and the war had already been declared.
2 days later, I drove back to the city to bring my mother home, not to the house where she had spent her final years with my father, but to the vineyard he had built in silence. She sat beside me in the car, her small frame swallowed by a wool shawl, her eyes clouded with that distant look I had come to know too well. Some days, the world slipped through her fingers like water. Other days, she clung to fragments of memory with a surprising strength. When we reached the gates of Mercer Estate, I slowed. The iron letters gleamed in the afternoon sun. She tilted her head, squinting as though trying to remember. "This place?" she whispered. "It's yours," I said softly. "He made it for you." Her hand trembled as she reached for mine. "Your father always promised me a vineyard. I thought it was just a dream." I helped her into the house, guiding her to the sitting room. She moved slowly, her eyes scanning every detail. The shelves filled with poetry, the turntable waiting with her old records. And then she saw it. A small vase of dried roses on the window ledge, just like the ones she used to keep when I was a boy. Tears welled in her eyes. "He remembered!" I swallowed hard, my chest tightening. "He remembered everything, Mother." For a long time she sat in silence, her fingers running over the spines of books she hadn't touched in decades.
Then she turned to me, her gaze suddenly sharp, almost lucid. "Christopher, you must protect this place. He knew they would come." Her words startled me. "You remember them?" Her eyes darkened. "Robert, Alan, David, they never forgave him for leaving. They will want what's his, but it's not theirs, it's yours. He told me once, if they ever tried to take it, the vineyard itself would bear witness." "The vineyard?" I asked carefully. She nodded, though the clarity in her eyes was already slipping away. "Records, ledgers, something in the wine cellar. He kept proof, said the land holds more than grapes, holds truth." Before I could press further, her face softened again, and she looked around with the bewildered expression of someone waking in a stranger's house. "Christopher, where are we?" I forced a smile. "We're home, Mother. Father built this for you." She leaned against me, weary, and I helped her to her room, the room he had marked with her name. As she drifted into sleep, I stood at the doorway, the weight of her earlier words heavy in my mind. The vineyard itself would bear witness. I returned to the cellar that night with a lantern in hand, retracing my steps past the barrels and shelves of bottles. I searched the walls, the racks, the stone floor. Finally, tucked behind a row of vintage casks, I found a locked cabinet carved with the Mercer crest. The key from my pocket slid in perfectly. Inside were ledgers, not just of wine production, but of financial transactions, contracts, and sworn affidavits, documents that tied my half-brothers to schemes stretching back decades. My father had hidden everything in plain sight, woven into the records of the vineyard itself. It wasn't just a sanctuary for my mother. It was a fortress of truth. As I closed the cabinet, the sound of gravel crunching outside reached my ears. Headlights flared against the cellar window. I froze, my lantern flickering in my hand. The brothers had returned, and this time they weren't alone.
I heard the engines cut and doors slam shut. From the cellar window, shadows stretched across the vineyard. 3 familiar figures flanked by 2 strangers in tailored suits. My half-brothers had not come alone this time. I extinguished the lantern, leaving only the faint moonlight filtering through the narrow glass. My father's ledger was still in my hands, its weight heavier than stone. He had trusted me with his secrets. Now I had to decide how to wield them. When the knock came, it wasn't furious like before. It was deliberate, polite, the kind that comes with paperwork already prepared. I opened the door. Robert stepped forward first, his complexion paler than I remembered, his smile practiced but strained. Alan carried a briefcase, and David lingered behind, silent as always. The 2 strangers introduced themselves as representatives of a development consortium, their eyes scanning the property with hunger. "Christopher," Robert began smoothly, "we realize our last visit was heated. Tonight we want to offer a reasonable solution." I folded my arms. "You mean a way to take what isn't yours?" Helen chuckled under his breath. "We're not here to fight. We're here to save you from years of litigation. This land is complicated. Wills, inheritance disputes, mineral rights. You won't stand a chance alone." He tapped his briefcase. "But with us, you walk away a millionaire. More money than you and your mother could ever spend." The words stung, because I knew they were aimed directly at my weak spot, her care. The medical bills, the quiet decay of her mind, the weight of it all. But I kept my face steady. "And in return, you erase everything Father built." David finally spoke, his voice low, almost pitying. "Christopher, don't romanticize him. He wasn't a saint. He hid this vineyard from all of us. Doesn't that tell you something?" "Yes," I said evenly.
It tells me he knew exactly who you were. For the first time, Robert's mask slipped. His eyes hardened, his tone sharp. You think you can protect this place, alone? You're not ready for the kind of war we're prepared to wage. Behind him, one of the men in suits cleared his throat and spoke. Our firm has already evaluated the land. The vines are valuable, yes, but the real fortune lies underneath. Oil. Do you have any idea the scale of wealth buried here? I kept my silence, though my pulse quickened. My father had been right. The secret was out. Alan pressed forward, sensing blood. Sell now, Christopher, before this becomes ugly. You'll lose in court, you'll drown in debt, and by the time it's over, your mother will have nothing. My hand brushed against the folder hidden under my jacket. Inside were the ledgers, the proof of their fraud, the shield my father had left me. I could end this conversation by placing the documents on the table, exposing every crime they had committed. But I hesitated. My father's voice echoed in my mind. Do not show them mercy when they come. Show them the truth. Yet truth, once revealed, could not be hidden again. And I wasn't ready. Not yet. I took a step back, forcing calm into my voice. You should leave. Robert's expression twisted with anger. Think carefully, Christopher. This is your last chance at peace. Peace? I said, my voice steady. You mistake silence for surrender, and I'm done being silent. The air grew taut, every eye fixed on me. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Robert turned sharply, signaling the retreat. Come on, he barked at the others. Let him cling to his illusions. They filed out, their footsteps echoing against the stone porch. But as the SUV pulled away, one of the suited men lingered a second too long, his gaze lingering on the vineyard. He smiled faintly, not at me, but at the land itself. And in that smile I saw it. The war was no longer just family. Outsiders had entered the game. I closed the door, bolted it, and pressed my back against the wood. Upstairs, my mother's faint humming drifted down the staircase, a melody from years past, fragile but real. I clutched the folder to my chest and whispered, Father, what have you drawn me into? Sleep escaped me that night. I wandered the corridors of the house, my father's presence pressing from every corner. His books, his notes, his handwriting carved into ledgers, all spoke louder than the threats my brothers had hurled at me. But their visit left me shaken. They weren't bluffing anymore. They had allies, money, and time on their side. At dawn, I went outside. The mist rolled low over the vineyard, blurring the rows into a dreamscape. My mother sat on the porch, wrapped in her shawl, staring at the vines as if waiting for someone to arrive. He planted hope here, she whispered, not looking at me. For a fleeting second, her voice was clear, her eyes alive. Then she drifted back into silence. I walked the vineyard aimlessly until I reached a section I hadn't explored, an older plot of vines, their trunks thicker, their leaves burnished silver in the morning light. A wooden post leaned at the edge of the row, carved with initials, M+M. My chest tightened. Maria and Mercer, my parents. I brushed away the ivy tangled around the base of the post and noticed a rusted latch half buried in the soil. Curious, I pulled at it, and the earth shifted to reveal a trap door, small but solid. Heart pounding, I dragged it open. A narrow staircase descended into darkness. I hesitated only a moment before going down. The air was cool, smelling faintly of cedar and ink. At the bottom was a low chamber, not large, but meticulously organized. Shelves of locked boxes, rolled maps, and files lined the walls. A single lamp hung from the ceiling, its cord leading to a generator that coughed to life when I pulled the chain. On the central table sat a sealed envelope marked with my name. I tore it open. "Christopher," it began, in my father's familiar hand. "If you are here, it means the fight has begun. You will need more than love for this land. You will need proof, leverage, and vision. That is why I built this room, to protect the vineyard and you." Inside the envelope was a key and a USB drive. A note explained, "The key opens the steel cabinet to your left. The drive contains everything I never dared to say aloud." I unlocked the cabinet. Inside were detailed geological surveys, not just of our land, but of neighboring properties. The oil reserves beneath Mercer Estate dwarfed those of the entire valley combined. My father had hired private geologists, secured independent verifications, and notarized every report. But that wasn't all. The files included copies of contracts the brothers had secretly signed with outside companies, selling rights they didn't own yet. Fraud. Documents that could ruin them, not just in court, but in every financial circle they depended on. And then I saw it. A letter drafted by Robert himself to one of the investors now circling our land. A letter promising exclusive rights in exchange for millions up front. It was signed, dated, and damning. I sat heavily at the table, my father's words echoing in my mind. "Do not show them mercy. Show them the truth." The USB drive waited in my palm, its surface cold, almost humming with the weight of what it carried. Evidence not just to defend the vineyard, but to end their influence altogether. Upstairs, the house creaked. I froze, listening. Then I heard it, the faint hum of an engine outside, followed by the crunch of tires on gravel. They were back. This time, I wasn't sure if they came with lawyers, investors, or something darker. But as I pocketed the USB and the key, I knew one thing. The moment to stay silent had passed. Engines roared up the gravel drive, louder this time, more cars than before. From the cellar's hidden chamber, I climbed the steps quickly, pocketing the USB drive like a weapon holstered for war. Through the front window, I saw them, Robert, Alan, and David, flanked not just by the two suited men, but by another pair in uniform. Not police, but private security. They weren't here to talk. I opened the door before they could knock. "Back again?" I asked, my voice sharper than I felt. Robert looked thinner, his illness etched across his face, but his eyes still burned with arrogance. "This is your last chance, Christopher. Hand over the deed, sign the papers, and we walk away." I didn't answer. Instead, I set my laptop on the porch railing, inserted the USB, and turned the screen so they could see. With one click, the files opened. Surveys, contracts, fraudulent letters bearing their signatures. Alan's face drained of color. "Where did you get those?" he asked. "My father left them," I said. "Every lie, every theft, every deal you made pretending you owned this place. He recorded it all. And now I have proof." David tried to stay calm, but I caught the twitch in his jaw. "Those documents won't hold up." "Don't bother," I cut him off, "because copies are already with Father's lawyer and with 2 journalists who will publish them if anything happens to me or my mother." The silence that followed was heavy. Even the wind through the vines seemed to pause. Robert's confidence cracked just for a moment. "You'd ruin your own family?" he said. I stepped forward, my voice low and steady. "Family protects. Family doesn't steal, doesn't manipulate, doesn't prey on the sick and dying. You gave up the right to call yourselves family long ago." Behind them, one of the suited investors cursed under his breath. "You told us you had clear rights. We're finished here." He stormed toward his car, the other following, leaving the brothers suddenly exposed. Alan's briefcase slipped in his grip. David muttered something I couldn't hear, but
but Robert just stared at me, a mix of fury and resignation burning in his eyes. He knew it was over. "Leave," I said, "and don't come back. The vineyard is mine, by law, by blood, and by truth." For a moment, I thought Robert might lunge at me, sick or not, but instead he turned on his heel, his voice gravel as he spat. "You'll regret this, Christopher." They climbed into their SUV, doors slamming, tires spitting gravel as they vanished down the long road. I stood there, chest heaving, the vineyard stretching behind me like an ocean of green. For the first time since my father's death, I felt the ground steady beneath my feet. That night I sat with my mother on the porch. She was quiet, her mind adrift, but when the sun dipped over the vines, she looked at me and whispered, "He built this for us, didn't he?" I nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, Mother, he did." Her frail hand found mine, and though her grip was weak, it anchored me more than anything else. Inside, the laptop still hummed with my father's files, his final weapon, his last gift. But I realized the vineyard was more than evidence, more than oil, more than wealth. It was a promise. The vines swayed gently in the evening breeze, rows upon rows, whispering like voices carried through time, my father's voice among them, steady and resolute. "Do not show them mercy, show them the truth." And I had. The Mercer vineyard would endure, not as spoils, not as a commodity, but as legacy. His, mine, and someday, perhaps, even my children's. The war was over, and for the first time, I could breathe.